back, everybody. Welcome back. Hot Mic Podcast. Nate the Barbarian with you. And we've got a good group of people to talk about what's going on, hot topics. We weren't with you last week with the holiday, but you was probably sick of us anyway. So I was sick of us. But now we're back. Glad to be with you. So let's get straight into it. Let's get straight into it. We got TNT with us. How you doing, TNT?
Hey Nathan, what's up, crew?
What's going on? What's going on? Kevin, the voice of reason, Aldridge. How you doing, bro?
Doing good. Good to be back with you.
Absolutely. Tarris, Horton, how you doing, Tarris?
What's up? I missed you guys last week, but I'm glad to be back on the panel with you guys.
Absolutely. And then we got a special guest with us, Todd McMurty, who represents the family of the Herzinger family. Am I saying that correctly? Herzinger?
Herringer.
I'm sorry, Herringer family. Herringer family. And of course, that's a tragic situation where a man, I believe, entered the home. Todd, you can give us the details. Somebody lost their life, and his widow now is justifiably, I think, in the minds of a lot of people, raising hell, letting it be known about her views about how the city is dealing with crime. So Todd is here to give us maybe some inside track. So Todd, again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Know you're very busy, as we all are. So thank you for being here again. So,
Oh, you're
so
welcome.
so fill in the blanks. Like, tell people who you represent and tell people the story quickly, and then I've got a few questions. I'll throw it to the panel, and they can ask their questions as well.
Okay, so I'll try to be quick and give you an overview. So, my wife and I are actually friends with the Herringer family and Patrick and Sarah, and they have a gym in Over the Rhine, and we go to their gym. So we know them from that setting. When this happened to Patrick, when Patrick was murdered, my wife and I stepped in to try to help, and I've been an advisor to her on the process of the criminal process, and also looking to see if there's anything civilly that can be done. But what basically happened is there was a gentleman, Mordecai Black, who had cut off his ankle monitor or whatever in February timeframe. He had gotten out of jail and was on some type of transitional housing situation, and he just left all that and kind of disappeared. He was in Cincinnati, but the police weren't really aware that he had done this. There was no effort made to try to find him or to do anything about his violating his probation. And for whatever, we don't know what would possess somebody to do what they did, but Mr. Black then broke into the Herringer home. That's in OTR, and murdered Patrick, stabbed him to death, and it was just a terrible situation. And so we just kind of rallied around her. And in the process of doing that, we've had meetings like with the mayor and the chief of police. Sarah has gone off and done a lot of her own interviews and social media posts to educate people about what happened, and kind of made her story very public. And I know that the social media traction that this whole situation has gotten is pretty massive. Talking both about her loss and the tragedy of losing her husband, who's a very, accomplished guy, super nice guy. That tragedy, and then, what's going on in Cincinnati, and it's just kind of getting out of hand, it seems. So I hope that's gives you enough info.
Yeah, it does. Initially, she had, maybe she still does, had a lot of criticism. It seemed at me, so the way I read it, and I watched that heartbreaking video that she put out on social media, is that she blamed the city, the mayor, the administration for, not doing enough. Is that what she still believes, or what is it that she believes that the city did wrong and or needs to do right?
Yeah, her criticism of the city really is there's two things. One is just inadequate policing in general. In her neighborhood, she would routinely hear gunshots. If anybody follows the news in Cincinnati, there have been a lot of shootings and death over there, which is, a terrible tragedy. And so she, on one hand, says we need more police to clear the streets so we don't have this going on. And then maybe a more specific example involving Patrick is, Mr. Black. I attended the arraignment in Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas, and Mr. Black is a 38-year-old gentleman, so he's been an adult for 20 years. 18 of those 20 years, he was in jail and for violent crime. And I think her other more pointed critique of Cincinnati or in general, what's going on is that when somebody that has this history of violent crime is loose and in violation of their parole, you ought to pay special attention to that. Most people aren't going to do this, right? Only a very small fraction of all people are going to commit this type of crime. And so, go after those people in particular more aggressively.
Crew and jump in.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, thanks again for being here. A couple of other questions, just based on some of the things that happened, again, that your client has been kind of critical of. She talked about being traumatized, a victim of a crime being traumatized again by the police. We know that she was handcuffed when the police came to the scene to investigate. Can you explain to us why that was? Was she given an explanation as to why she was cuffed, what the police were thinking in that instance?
Well, the police haven't told us what they were thinking. I would speculate that she was covered in blood and her husband was dying on the floor of her house, and she was a likely suspect. So I think that it was traumatic, obviously, the entire event. But we don't really allege that the police did anything wrong in doing that. I think it was just more in the moment, severe trauma. Now, once she was taken into police custody, she was kept there for quite a while and didn't know that her husband had died at I think at University of Cincinnati Hospital, until hours later. She didn't get out of jail or out of police custody until about 2:00 that afternoon.
One of the other questions that I had, and then I'll let the other panelists sort of take it there. An unfortunate, turn of circumstances, just sort of the randomness of this. Do you know, was Mr. Black, was he trying to get any property? Do you know much about the details of what went down sort of once he broke into the house, how he got in, what happened when he got in there, or did he just kind of come in with murderous intentions? What do you know about that?
We don't really know. And the prosecutor's office has asked that we not share details of what happened, but I can say that he did break in to the property. And once he was in there, he murdered Patrick. There was video footage of him that very evening, like Ring camera video type video. And he was walking the streets with a big knife. I mean, just right up and down the street with a big knife. So did he want to murder somebody, or was he looking to break in and, murdered somebody in the process? I don't know. It is a felony murder, though. So he's charged with breaking into a home and then committing a murder. So it's that charge has been made. But I don't know. He hasn't said what he was doing. But I would just infer from the fact that he was stalking around in the middle of the night that with a knife, that's not a very that strikes me as somebody that was looking for trouble, right?
Can I ask to speak on the Herringers living in OTR, and everyone knows that OTR, it's not sweet down there. It's a dangerous place. I mean, no matter how gentrified and no matter how much they try to change the city landscape, and it's still OTR. So could you speak on their understanding that? And then someone in the comment in the chat just said, why are they is this case getting attention and other cases aren't? Can you speak on, access? You were a member of this gym, so of course you have a vested interest to something like this. Could you speak on those two things? That did they understand where they lived at, so these potential things could happen? Yeah. And is this case getting special attention, and why that is happening?
Okay. So yeah, they understood where they lived. And I think that maybe they just had the idea that they were making things better by having a business and living there. You can look back in 2020 hindsight now and say that probably wasn't a good idea. But I think some people are kind of, hopeful that they'll make a positive change and help people out, right? By bringing jobs and so forth to the area. They probably hope to create positive change. Why is this case getting attention? I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, for one thing, Patrick is he was a decorated combat veteran. having served in Afghanistan. He awarded 2 Bronze Stars for valor. So he's kind of, he's the kind of person that attracts attention in that regard, or, just kind of a highly accomplished person who was then murdered. But I think the bigger question is, why are the other things that are happening there not getting attention? They deserve attention. These are all people that are dying or being murdered because the city hasn't addressed the violence issue down there. And I think they need to do whatever it takes. And Tarris, I get your point. It's OTR, right? But they need to do more. They need to eliminate this. You can't turn a blind eye to some kid who shoots another kid and then ignore that. You have to pay as much attention to all these things. And a life is a life. So I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say that my heart goes out to your client. I recently had a loved one that was viciously murdered, pregnant, in front of her kids, shot to death in a car. And it got some publicity or whatnot, but it's not an ongoing topic. We did finally get closure with the person or the murderer being apprehended and doing time. And so for me, when I first kind of got a word about this particular story, it just was kind of off to me that the first thing the family was thinking about was political, because I know with my family, we were more concerned about the perpetrator being brought to justice and having our day in court so that our family and the children that are left behind can get some sort of resolve with the situation. The last thing on my mind was the mayor, the police and everything else, but to each his own. Doesn't take away from the family, the wife's feeling, especially under the circumstance of being apprehended and being accused. So I get all of that part. But I just kind of am concerned about where this is going now, where it just seems more of like the pointing of the fingers, political situation after such a tragic event. And like one of the comments left by, I think that was Nat Turner. And we don't know this, and it doesn't look like you're in a position to share, but just the abruptness of this encounter. Your client probably never seen this person, would never in any other circumstances run across this individual. And for that to be the case, it's like, I'm wondering if mental health was an issue. And there's a lot of people suffering from mental health. You could walk down the street and people are talking to themselves, yelling and everything else, and you just never know the violent tendencies that someone can have. And with all the preparation in the world and the police and what we can do to fund that and secure and support that, police can't prevent crime. They're enforcers of the law. They can try to thwart it and everything else, but they don't have the magic ball to predict when something is going to happen to people. So the level of accountability, I would be looking toward, where was the breakdown in the communication when this person ankle bracelet was cut off? Like, why, with all the technology that we have, why wasn't there some sort of alert to communicate to the police department like that this person we should be on the lookout, and with his history can be a violent or have suffering from mental health or whatever the situation? That's the preventative measures that I would be questioning and wondering. And what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, first off, there's nothing I know that says that Mr. Black suffered, from a diagnosed mental health problem, right? So not that there couldn't be, and I wouldn't be surprised if the defense attorneys in the case tried to assert that he was suffering, temporary insanity or some mental health problem as a defense. That's one thing. And then the comment that says maybe he should have been, institutionalized, that's entirely possible. I mean, that's a whole other topic that, we need to address. I mean, some people really aren't fit to be in society. I don't know about Mr. Black, but on the issue of how to approach this problem, I think that Sarah really just wanted to bring positive change, as a result of this. And I think her desire to see violence more directly addressed in Cincinnati is her effort to maybe save somebody else's life by raising hell over this issue. And, she's been able to do that because she's been very eloquent on social media, presented some great stuff, that's very powerful. And then also the gym, has a whole, there's many people associated with that gym. So when all those people start reposting these posts, then thousands and thousands and thousands of people see it. So it generated a lot of its own traction because of the compelling nature and the terrible tragedy that was involved. But I think finding a way to go to do more to save others' lives is what she wants to do. Oh, and on the communication issue, there was not much communication from the Ohio parole to the city of Cincinnati police, and we're going to investigate whether why that communication breakdown occurred and try to see that that's addressed. And my understanding is that one of the local legislators is proposing a bill in the Ohio Congress that would make sure that when something like this occurred, that there was a direct communication alerting local police to this problem and kind of raising the alarm on that when it does
So
occur.
Todd, as you sit here right now today, who do you blame? I mean, initially Sarah came out and had a lot of criticism for Cincinnati, which, and I said on this podcast, I mean, dealing with something like that, I understand, give that person, the stage and just, they're dealing with something that's emotional. But I didn't think it was necessarily fair. I just can't imagine the Cincinnati Police Department knowing that there's somebody out there that cut off their ankle bracelet and they're just not looking for them. I just don't believe that whatsoever. Now, it obviously, perhaps there were some problems in the system, but as you sit here right now, where's the blame? Like, is it the city? Is it the state? Because they're both pointing fingers at one another. From your perspective, who's the blame here?
Yeah. So, I agree with your points. I think that, but let me say this. I did sit in the room with the Cincinnati police chief, and she said they were not aware of this problem. I don't know whether they should have been aware of it. That's another issue. But she said they were not aware that Mr. Black was she told me that. I sat in a room with her and the mayor and heard them say that. So, where do I place the blame? I place the blame on what do humans always do? They don't communicate. They don't follow up. They don't abide by the rules that they've established. More attention should have been brought to this situation. And of course, I blame Mr. Black, for this. I blame him for doing that. It's a terrible tragedy, for the Herringer family. And, as a Christian, I have human compassion for him as well. It's just a tragedy all around. But what we want to see is we want to see changes in legislation so that the next time somebody cuts off their ankle bracelet and they're supposed to have it on, that the police show up before something bad happens and not after something bad has happened. And so I think that Ohio Probation Parole Office and the city of Cincinnati didn't do enough to address this issue, and they needed to do more. So that's where I would place the blame behind the actual murderer.
So Todd, is it fair to say then that you expect that I know you said you were advising her on civil matters. Is it then fair to expect that, the city and maybe even the state can see something coming on behalf of your client in the terms of some sort of civil redress? I know you've talked about getting laws changed and policy changes, but certainly a civil suit is something that's much closer to, you can't replace a life lost, but obviously that's some form of I don't know what the right word to use is it, but something else that would be more personal in return for your client.
Yeah, I mean, our system doesn't allow for, there's criminal justice and civil justice, right? We can't go fight a duel over this. We can't, go back and shoot somebody else and, or shoot some family member for this and have some kind of, crazy, feud. So we have to rely upon the legal system that we have. So yes, to answer your question directly, we are investigating a civil lawsuit. I think there's a lot of policies and procedures that both the city and the state did not follow. And to the extent they're not immune, cities and the state especially has what they call sovereign immunity. They're immune to suit, but I would expect that we will bring a civil suit. We're investigating that right now to make sure that we have a strong legal basis, and we've got to gather more facts, but that's in the works.
Go right ahead, Tarris.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate Todd's time for coming on here and explaining this because I've gotten a lot of knowledge just from listening. When you talk about the civil suit, would you pursue a civil suit if you don't see a case there, or if like, I know that's a softball question, but I mean, how is this process going to work out? Because if people don't know, in the past you are very successful at these type of defamation and in these type of cases. You're very well decorated in this. So, and I appreciate the process that you guys are going through, as far as like the grief process that Sarah's going through, and then getting that process out, and then step number 2, legislation has to be changed. And just hearing you say that makes me feel a whole lot better about the whole process of what you guys are going through. And now that we're talking about the civil, if there is no liability that can be placed blame, because you know the state's going to blame the city, the city's going to blame the state, road board's going to blame this one, and it could be caught up in litigation for years and years and years. How far will you take this to see that closure is happens?
Yeah. If there is, if there's a good faith basis to bring the lawsuit, then we will bring the lawsuit. If there's not, we won't. If we do bring it, I would anticipate that it's the kind of thing that would have to go to a jury trial, because we would want a jury verdict that would alter Cincinnati's approach to how they deal with situations like this, where they get serious about stopping senseless murders in the city of Cincinnati.
Okay, but you just said you thought you wait. Okay, you made that statement. I get it, but you just said that the police chief told you that they had no idea, and you said you kind of believed her. So which is it?
Oh, well, I think that the issue is, I know that in the past they had policies and procedures that they should have followed. Okay, that would have given them the idea. I think the problem is that they didn't follow their own policies and procedures. So she didn't know because they weren't doing their job properly.
Really? So what exactly? What policy and procedure do you feel like they didn't follow?
Well, I know that in years past, the city they have a team of people dedicated to going out and finding people who have violated their probation or their parole, and that they understood that there was a lack of communication with the state, but that for whatever reason they weren't following those policies and procedures, this year or in recent years past. I think they had a policy, and I think that they stopped following.
You think, or you have verified evidence or some kind of evidence behind it?
I have people telling me these things, and that's part of the investigation.
So for the last 2 years, the Cincinnati Police Department has had nobody. They got 1,000 officers. They've had no officers dedicated to trying to find people that broke their parole. I mean, anything is possible, but that sounds highly unlikely to me. There's something about that. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, the police chief did tell me that she didn't know. Other police officers have told me that she should have known, and we'll just have to investigate that. I don't know what the truth is. We'll have to investigate that in this process.
It's the wordplay for me. Like, I would not be surprised if the police chief didn't know, because I'm sure that everything doesn't go across the police chief's desk. Like this doesn't sound like something that would even rise to the level of the Cincinnati police chief even having to know, right? Because you've got other folks that would deal with this. So I don't know if there's a word game going on with that, but it just seems so, anything is possible. I know they're talking about losing a lot of officers, but that just seems so highly unlikely to me. But anything is possible.
I don't know, and we're going to investigate. If I find out, I'll let Tarris know, and I'll come back and tell you.
The Cincinnati Police Department. I just find it laughable that the Cincinnati Police Department is not looking for dark-skinned Black people with a long history of violence. I just don't see that. I'm sorry. What are they doing?
I think one thing in fairness, Nathan, it seems implausible, but I think one of the things that you might not be taking into account, and the police have even admitted to this, is that they don't have enough personnel and enough people to do everything. That's all they talk about, is the shortage of officers that they have to be able to cover things. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they're not checking because of resource shortages and a whole lot of other reasons that some things could be slipping through the cracks. I mean, I think that's where the investigation part of this comes in, is let's see what the I wouldn't look in Cincinnati. I would not be quick to declare anything impossible or implausible. I would say let's see what they uncover in the investigation.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
you would think it wasn't plausible that a dude could cut off his ankle bracelet and be walking around the middle of the street with a knife and nobody do anything.
I can see
That's
that.
implausible. Yet and still it
That's not
happens.
that's not implausible at all. That's not it. Have you driven through some of these neighborhoods? You see all kind of crazy stuff. Like TNC said, that's nothing. The cut off his ankle monitor, I expect that. To have a knife, that sounds weird, but you can see all kind of crazy stuff going on. And I just find it highly unlikely. And again, I'm not going to take a hard stance on it. I'm just going to say I think it's highly unlikely that when the Cincinnati Police Department is deciding where they're going to cut corners, they're going to cut corners with allowing scary black people with a long history of criminal violence just walking through the streets, and they just don't care about it. If you're going to cut some corners, that's not where you cut corners. But I'm not in the Cincinnati Police Department, and I think differently, and we'll figure out what the evidence is. It's just a very tragic story.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and this might be fair or unfair, but is Sarah and or you or the family circle aware of some of the chatter that people are having about this case in terms of the racial implications? There's a lot of folks, and people have made the same comment here on the show. They feel like, if this was black folks, we wouldn't be talking about it. And while I think I'm not trying to lay this guilt on you at all, or Sarah, it's not your issue. I am curious as to, do you hear this? Has she heard this? And does that impact like the way she might be moving forward in terms of like building some kind of grassroots movement or working with other, families that have lost somebody or something like that?
I mean, I think that's a great idea and a good recommendation from you. No, I haven't personally heard the chatter about this. I can see why people might think, here's Patrick Herringer getting all the attention, and here's somebody else.
Oh, absolutely. That's what they think.
Not getting 100%. Attention, right? That makes sense. But I think it's also important to understand that again, we're talking, a pretty massive social media campaign. Nobody reached out to Sarah until she started, making noise. And then, a week later, we hear from the city where now they want to talk. So she had to make a lot of noise to make this happen. So I think the city wanted to ignore this as they ignore other problems. We just didn't let them ignore it. And we have the ability to shape social media in a way to get attention. And I think, grassroots and things like that, that may be something that happens. It may be a broader coalition, because I don't think that it's acceptable for, any of these murders to occur. I don't think we can turn a blind eye to any of these things. It's terrible. It's not good for society. It's not good for the people who are involved. We need to find solutions, and we need to stop this violence.
I want to jump in and say something about Todd, because I met Todd in 2020 whenever he was running. I believe he was running for, he's going to run against Thomas Massey. So I was supporting Todd in his campaign, and we became acquaintances. And I followed his career. And one time we went out to lunch, and I'll never forget it, because we both have Elizabethtown, Kentucky roots. And we were talking about the racial tension that was going on in 2020. And you said, well, man, I don't feel racist. And at that moment, I knew, and I'll say this too, if something was to happen to me, like I said on this show previous, if something was to happen to me and I felt injustice, Todd would be the first person that I would call. So I don't think it's a race thing at all. Like, if people are going to make this about a racial thing, as it could be, but it could be an access thing as well, because I have had access to form a relationship with Todd to where I know that if something was to happen to me in this regard, he would take as much effort with this as he is doing with Sarah. So if anybody's going to think about race, I would highly doubt that race makes any kind of measure in this.
Thanks.
I just recall a conversation where the mayor was actually on talk radio, and he kind of got a lashing from the community, basically in respect of there's a lot of homicides that happen in the city of Cincinnati, and everyone don't have the same kind of access that Mr. McMurtry client did. And so they were just basically saying to him to, in respect, if you're going to be accessible to this person, be more accessible to all the victims of crime in that respect, if they're looking for that. And note taken. But I think that's kind of like the sentiment of some people in the community. Our community definitely suffers from, being victims of crime, a family member. and just to, blatantly have the mayor at your beck and call. Everyone doesn't get that. And so I think it was very commendable of him to speak to your client, take heed of whatever criticism she had, and take ownership and accountability, even if it, in some respects, it was a little far stretched. There was other people to hold accountable for that, but to just own it because he cared. But he also had to go back and face a community that get these type of incidents happening to them every day, and don't get to call them up and say, hey, talk to me about it and everything else. And so that's just kind of like the chatter of what's going on. You may not be aware of that, but I think the mayor has a lot on his plate. I don't think it's possible for him to be accessible to everyone for every situation, but he can make a valid effort, and I know he would, and he would try. But at the same time, it's just like, I hope your client appreciates that he did reach out and did the best he could to be a comfort to her in that traumatic time.
No, he was generous with his time when we did meet with him. But I think the larger issue is that, people are dying, and that's not a good thing. And Sarah's going to do what she can to make a positive difference and to build upon, to find some good out of the tragedy that she's had to live through.
Hey, Todd, let me ask you, and I don't know if this is the last question that we have time for. You've already been very generous, but in case it is, I'll just ask you, since you know the Herringers personally, not that you're just representing them in this situation. I know from having been in the media for nearly 30 years now, when these sorts of stories come up, people tend to see folks who are at the center of this based on what they see on the news or read in the newspaper. And we know that that's oftentimes an incomplete picture of who someone is, what their motivations might be, how they might even be dealing with their grief. And there are a lot of people who are out there probably not just sizing up what happened to your client, but your client in and of herself and how she's responding and reacting. Maybe you can kind of talk to, from your own personal interactions with her, to just kind of tell us a little bit about, who you know her to be and sort of how she's dealing with this situation from the times that I'm sure you've seen and dealt with her when the cameras aren't on, or, she's not under the eye of public scrutiny.
Yeah, no, my wife and I have known Sarah and Patrick for about 5 years, and we've spent, been to dinner with them, had them at our house, visited their house. I was at Patrick's birthday party just about 2 weeks before, he was murdered, and saw how they interacted. They were a very loving couple, and they worked together to have a good marriage. They worked together to have a thriving business, their Finley Movement Gym. But they were just really nice people, and they had a lot of friends. So in other words, people enjoyed being around them because they were very welcoming, and, they were interesting to talk to. They had, incredible life experiences, Patrick being a combat veteran, and how they met, love at first sight, out in Colorado, they met. Sarah literally did not know Patrick, and she saw him, and somebody said, "Oh, that's Patrick." She said, "That's the man I'm going to marry." And sure enough, it was. So it was really a love at first sight relationship that they had. And that kind of spontaneity and kindness, they brought that to all their relationships with their friends, like my wife and me and other people that they knew. And when this occurred, people came in from all over the country to go to the celebration of life, to help Sarah through these hard times. Friends came and stayed with her at her home. And they did a lot. So they attracted kindness from others because they showed a lot of kindness to others, and they were just happy, nice people, easy to get along with, fun to talk to, great to hang out with. So that's what I would say.
Well, Todd, thank you for your time, and appreciate you sharing. Yeah. And let's stay connected.
Okay, you're welcome. I enjoyed being here.
Yep.
Best wishes to all of you.
Yep. Shout out to Tarris, man. Tarris with the connect. I'm still gonna be hard on you, Tarris. Don't think you're getting. I'm still gonna be hard on you.
I expect it. I expect it. I expect
But
it.
I appreciate you, bro. Yeah, Tarris brought that together, everybody. They have a personal relationship, and we were going to do it last week, but kind of last minute cancel kind of thing. So I really appreciate you, setting that up and then resetting it up again. So I appreciate the time that took.
It's all gravy. It's all good.
Yeah, good conversation. So let's keep it in Cincinnati. Is there a curfew? I keep seeing on Facebook people are posting like curfew or something. Is there a curfew in Cincinnati, or is that like a wish thing? People wish there was a curfew because either you're not paying attention to it. There's been an uptick, at least in gun violence in the city of Cincinnati, and everybody is wondering what's going on. Something happened out at, I don't know where it was. It was a fireworks celebration. Apparently,
Blue ash.
Blue ash. There it is. I don't know. I tend to tune off those kind of stories. I don't want to just pile on like everybody else, right? It's always the same thing. Where's the mama? Where's the daddy? It starts at home. The family is broken down. Family. You need to charge the mama. Charge the daddy. It's the same old conversation. I don't even tune in anymore and read the comments because I already know what they're going to say. Black folks is just as worse as white folks when we come to our kids. Just as worse. We think we got to solve everything with like a whooping and or jail time with our own children. But then when white people do it to us, all of a sudden we got a problem. So I decided to give empathy. I don't know the background of the kids up in where was it up again? You said
Blue ash.
But apparently they were shooting off fireworks. I'm like, they fireworks. What's
but
the big deal?
They were
doing it. They were doing it in the middle of the crowd, Nathan. It wasn't like they was out in the field somewhere.
Kids have always did that in the middle of crowds. Kids
I'm not. You can say kids can always do it, but look, the reality of it was it a dumb thing that kids do? Absolutely. Was it a dumb thing that kids do that could have got people killed? Absolutely, because there were over, I think they said, 100,000 people that were out there at that Blue Ash event and something crazy like that. And then you get gunshots and people start running. I don't know if you've ever been in those scenarios before, Nathan, but I have. And that is not anything that you want to be in the middle of. And that's not anything to be lightly dismissed as just like some kids, doing stupid stuff and pranks. Like if somebody had gotten killed in that, and I think you did have an officer get hurt. Like that's not anything to poo-poo.
More people get killed at baseball games, right? Because they trip and fall on those stairs. It's kids being kids. Kids have always gone to the family barbecue and they want to fire off a firecracker behind granddaddy and see granddaddy jump up and down, and then granddaddy get upset and chase him with a switch. Come on now, let's act like this is not. This is normal stuff.
I think it's preventative measures as well too. The city of Blue Ash, the city council, and everybody, the planning committee has already came back out and said, we start planning for this a year in advance, and we are going to make sure next year something like this doesn't happen. So I agree with both. I agree that Nathan it's something that's not that big of a deal, that's blown out of proportion, to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. But I kind of agree with both. But I don't think it's right for 400 kids to be running around with bottle rockets or firecrackers, running around inducing panic. That's not good. That's not good, man. I don't like that.
You know what? Listen. Just because you scared don't mean I did something to make you scared. Get a backbone. And does anybody have an accurate head count on was it really 400? Because you know how people can get when they get panicked.
I think that might be a little bit overinflated. 400. I question that number too. That sounds like people were
400 when only one person got charged. That don't make no sense. That don't make no sense.
It was probably 15 kids out there.
Yeah.
There's probably about 15 kids out there, but to scary people, I'm so afraid. It looked like 400. Please stop. If you're that afraid, stay at home. Stay at home.
15 kids of a certain type can look 400.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I don't believe this was us. I don't believe this was us though. I don't believe it was 400 or 15 of us doing. I think that's white people stuff right there. That's not our time.
We got to take a hard look at ourselves because people are stressed the F out right now, and they trying to act like they not. But when you come home and you have children, some of that's going to seep into them. So the anxiety that we're feeling because of Tarris's boy Trump, and all the evil stuff he's doing, on top of just being an adult and raising a family, on top of all of that, a lot of that's going to be transferred. That anxiety is going to be transferred to our children. on top of everything they're dealing with. So once again, Americans are going to misdiagnose the situation. It's all about locking them up and crime and punishment instead of long-term planning and dealing with this as a health issue. It's going to be a criminal issue. And so it's the same old, same old. So when I saw the curfew, is this a real thing, Kevin? Kevin would know.
I haven't seen us report anything
It's
like
not a real thing then.
officially about a curfew. That doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, we just may not have gotten to it yet, or it could be coming, but I have not seen anything officially that.
I hope we don't do a curfew.
I don't know, because someone on Facebook, a friend of mine, snapshot this, and she made it a point like it's about damn time, sick of this. But and I'm just looking at her post, and it looked like she just snapped it right off the TV off a news station. But it says Cincinnati curfew ordinance: 15-year-olds after 10 p.m., 16 or 17-year-olds after midnight may be detained and cited for breaking. Guardians may also be cited. So I'm gonna go and check that out to make sure that's right. But it looked like she just snapped it right off.
Yeah, is it this right here?
But my question with that though is, TNT, is that an old, like, hasn't Cincinnati always had like a curfew for young people? Yes. Like that may not be anything new. That might be something that's like always
reinforced.
Yes,
or maybe they're enforcing it.
I believe.
It might not be. It might be loosely enforced or not enforced at all. But I don't think the idea of a curfew is new. I think it's not.
I think Kevin is correct, to my knowledge, that this is on the books and that CPD is just not enforcing it. So I don't know. So you saw the same thing. This has been circulating. Yeah. I couldn't find any credible local news sources to back it up. So I just figured people were circulating this, and it's like a wish list. Yeah. And I just, here we go again, more criminality. Like, this might temporarily get us through the summer until it gets cold again and the animals aren't out in the street, because the people get agitated when it gets heated, right? We get that. At least that's the way people view us and view our children, not me.
But I have a 15-year-old, and there's nothing she needs to do after 10. My child is in the house, and unless we're going to the movies or she's with someone, she's with an adult, that's going to keep them at their house. She's not just out roaming. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't anything after midnight, even next year. And I have a son that's 18. And, that's really hard for me, because I got to remember he is an adult, but at the same time, you still living in my house. So you got to be in the house. You know what I mean? So parents should be on top of that. It shouldn't have to be an ordinance stating these things. But if this has happened frequently, then yeah, it makes sense. And then when you having, the lives of young people, homicides at 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds, and things happening, cars being stolen, it's like it's nothing good happening after those hours for people that age. They shouldn't be on the streets anyway. So if there's an influx of young people outside like that, then that's a problem. If the parents, and I give grace, because I know there's a lot of grandparents taking care of these young folks too, and it's they don't have the ability equipped to like stay on top of them or whatever the situation may be, or it's just it's young people taking care of a host of young kids, and it's just one that just want to keep running out or leaving or sneaking out. And what can you do? You know what I'm saying? You got all these other kids to take care of. So it's hard for people, but hopefully they treat every situation isolated, and they figure out what the issue and try to help the family, and not just be like a big enforcer where you're locking people up and you're making the situation worse than it already is, instead of just finding some services that can help these people.
Well, what's interesting, and I don't know if you read this or not, Nathan, and TNT, I agree with everything that you just said. And Nathan, I know you're tired of the narrative about the parents, but the reality is that is at the root of everything that you just said. And the breakdown of the parental family structure is something that cannot be ignored. And when parents aren't there to do the things like TNT said, set your own curfew, when you leave it up to the city and the police to do that, then you get what you get, because it starts with having a strong structure at home. Now, I get you've got a lot of issues, things like poverty and drugs are really big that are destroying families and things of that nature. Yes, you've got to address those things. But I'm here to tell you that the government structure is I'll say Cincinnati's government structure has been trying to do that, right? And they're taking a lot of criticism for it. Because if you look at the Act Cincy plant program and some of the things that the city has tried to do to address some of these underlying root cause problems that we talk about for why kids might be out running the streets, whether it's, families ain't got jobs or groceries or, you name it, any myriad of the issues, the city has spent some money trying to address these things, and it hasn't impacted the violent situation. And so now you've got people on the other side of that who are coming out of the woodwork and saying, man, the city is wasting all of this money on these other things that y'all are talking about, and it's not having any discernible impact on the crime number. And this is the tug of war that you've got going on right now.
Yeah, but I resist the way that you just put that up.
We can sit back and talk about all of these services that are needed, but there are people who are on the other side saying, well, the city of Cincinnati is spending money on this, spending millions of dollars on this, and we're still getting shootings and crimes and things of that nature. It's not working.
You're making a common mistake, though, Kevin. You're making a common mistake.
I'm not making I'm just telling you what people are saying. I'm telling you what the narrative is.
And if you are reiterating what people saying those people are making a common mistake, because one thing you said that sticks out of me, you said, listen, the city has been making this investment, the federal government has been making an investment into programs to try to alleviate these situations that lead to crime. And to say that it hasn't worked is not true. It is not true. It has worked. It does work. It's measurable. It impacts it. And when there's a crime, we generalize too much. We got to be specific. These kind of programs do work. After school programs do work. They do have an impact. We should be funding these kind of programs. Look at what they're doing in Baltimore. They're seeing an incredible decrease in crime because they're investing in these kind of programs. If we had did this in the 80s, what we're dealing with right now is the long term of neglect in some of these neighborhoods. Man, listen, there are neighborhoods in Cincinnati that you wouldn't want to walk past. How in the hell are they going to produce the next generation of leaders, and they live in these kind of circumstances? Then you go 5 blocks in Cincinnati, and you got people that look like it's like where the Huxtables live, where the Cosbys live. This vast inequity in income and who got the money impacts their children, and this is what we see. So we can't turn our backs on them, and then they turn out wrong, and then we say, well, hey, we got to turn our backs on them even more. No, we got to invest in these children and in their families so we can get measurable outcomes that can improve their lives, to give them something to live for. You give me a 15-year-old that's out there something doing dumb at 15, is peer pressure, lack of home structure, and he or she feel like I ain't got nothing to live for. Nothing. I'm probably going to be dead soon. So it don't matter what I'm doing. And we need to invest in hope in these neighborhoods with these babies, and it's going to take a long time, and you're going to see a lot.
There you go, Nathan. This is what you're up against. Okay, so you're absolutely 100% right. Programs work, but they take time. You've talked about a problem that's taken us 20, 30 years. This is what we're seeing today is the result of 20, 30 years of neglect. But the political challenge is people want quick return on the investment of dollars. And I can tell you this from a fact. When John Cranley had his lifting up, what was it, something like 10 or 15,000 families out of poverty, he wanted to do that in a term. He wanted to do that in a term, okay? Everybody who works in that field who consulted with told him, this is a long-term strategy. Like, you're not going to be able to produce the kind of results that you want to see in a term. It didn't get there in a term. So you got to look at these strategies that we're implementing as long-term. He was like, absolutely not. I got to show some numbers, some results in a term. And so he did a lot of shortcuts, a lot of things that look good for optics. But to your point, you said he didn't really do a lot of things, but he did the things that you could show up at a press conference and say, and throw a few families up there and say, hey, look, here's what we've done, but you've had no discernible long-term impact. So the politics of what people don't have, what people have to develop an appetite for is this notion that the money that we are spending now ain't going to produce results the results that you want, that you think you ought to see in 6 months. This might be a 6-year, 10-year type arc to get to where we want to be, but it's going to take continual investment over that time period. We want to see too quick a return on these investment dollars, and that's the political battle that you fight, because the people who don't want to spend that money in the first place, that's going to be the first thing they say is, oh, well, the city spent $3 million and look, we still got all these shootings going on. What's up with that? Right? Like, that's the politics.
Mm-hmm. I want to give a little bit more detail to what Nathan was talking about earlier, as far as the example with Baltimore. The mayor there, he has record low homicides. And it says here, Baltimore finished the first half of 2025 with the fewest homicides ever recorded. Thank you, Mayor Brandon Scott. This is an African-American mayor. But to give context, like what you were talking about, Kevin, it was the governor, a Black governor, Westmore, who initiated the Enough Act, which was federal funding upwards of $10 million per year for interventions in communities with disproportional high numbers of children living in poverty. Okay, and that was in 2024. They're saying in the first half of 2025 with the fewest homicides ever recorded. Let me show you some of the things. Let me share with you some of the things that they've done. So Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott invested in 42 summer youth camps, 29 literacy programs, extended the recreational center hours to 11 p.m., planned block parties, opened the pools for safe fun, and opened several schools up for summer classes, and crime is down 62%. And that's in Baltimore. So, there's a model. It doesn't have to take 6 years. It does take time, but if you're really invested in putting yourself forward in support of these initiatives and investing in your community, you can see some results. But it really takes the individuals. When you use the example of Cranley, I think he was 1 foot in and 1 foot out. He didn't know if he wanted to invest in these type of initiatives or more police. You know what I mean? And sometimes, these politicians, they get, stuck in a hard place and not knowing which way to go. And sometimes it's both and on top of a curfew or whatever it takes. But it does start with these particular investments in a community. They do work. There is nothing for these kids to do. And so when there is an event or is a community event that's going on anywhere, they're going to swarm in, because it's probably one of the few things that they can all come together and do. And then without the proper security or whatever, things can get out of control quick. So I think the investments need to be made, and people have to be serious on reducing violence. And overall, we know homicides has come down in general. So, things are working, but when you're targeting youth and young people, you have to be, like laser focused.
It's interesting because we live in a blue city, but it's that same mentality. Like, it's like in like red, in like the Republican communities, there's a real appetite to see brown people being locked up and being shuffled out of the country because they're being deported because they were illegal or some kind of criminal threat. But in this city, it feels like there's an appetite to see brown and Black youth shackled up and going through juvenile court. We want to see that. That'll make us feel better, to see more, Black kids having interactions with police officers. I just think it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea right now. And, I think it would be unfortunate if something happened. And it's just bad. But hey, if that's what the city decides to do and it works, however long that works, hey, go right ahead. That's why they run the city.
This is one of those circumstances. If our friend Phil was here, he would be arguing on the opposite side of of exactly what I'm saying, because he's one who's not a believer in those types of intervention efforts working, and he said it many times. He's like he's mocked the midnight basketball and many these other proposals, because he feels like the best way to get kids not to do stupid things is to penalize them, right? Like you said, the whooping or throw them in jail. He is, and the reality is that Black or white, there are a lot of people who subscribe to that. There are a lot of people who subscribe to the
That was my point, Kevin. I called them out as hypocrites.
Yeah.
That's my point. Some of these same black people will stay at home and be aghast at what Trump is doing to brown folks, but then you want that to be done with your children in the city of Cincinnati so you can feel good at night. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. Shame on everybody.
And I'll tell you what else worked, because my son is a teenager, 18 years old, is those basketball tournaments, those 3-on-3. Like he and his friends are looking for that everywhere. Like my church was having it, and I'm not, an avid church goer, but my mother is. And then she ended up telling him about it, like, oh, the church had a tournament. He's like, I already knew. They pick up, they're looking for little tournaments to get into. They can get with their friends. He's always at a gym. That's what they love to do. And so, and all of these little basketball, like AAU and different ones, a lot of times it's not enough funding for that. They should fund more of those, so those kids, they can go out of town and everything else, because it really gets kids off the street. And I remember, a few years back being placing my kids in like the Over the Rhine AAU program over there, basketball, my daughter and my son. And I think we even interviewed the coach. I mean, he was a young guy, and he was up here, taking time out of his day, teaching these young kids from all over the neighborhood. And it's just like, without that program, it's no telling what they would have been getting into. So, I mean, it really speaks volumes. These kids just want to have fun, but if it's nothing to do, idle time. And then, like someone said in the comments, with the influx of gun and just the easy access, they're tapping into other things that they don't need to tap into. And, a lot of lives are being taken, unexpectedly, because they're just out here with nothing to do. And so the more we invest in the people that are trying to get our kids off the street and programs and different things that they like to do, we'll see better results. So I totally believe in that. I totally believe in that. Kind of like the parable of the fence and the ambulance. If you ever heard about that, where it was a community, they lived on top of the hill. Some people in the community wanted to just have the ambulance in case the kids fell down the hill. Some people said, build a fence to prevent them from falling down the hill. And that's just kind of like, are we going to have a fence, or are we just going to add more police? And just when they do get in trouble, pick them up, prosecute them and everything else. Or are we building programs to keep them from getting in trouble to begin with?
Yeah. And that's got to start early. That's got to start super early. I think if you wait until a kid gets to the teenage years, I'm not saying that it's too late, but there's a lot of stuff that happens, early in life up to teenage years, that it can be kind of hard to somewhat get in and change the mindset. So we got to start with our young kids, setting them on the right path at a very early age, and keeping hands on them, keeping things for them to do, keep them in positive ways. Because look, I mean, here's one thing that you do have to acknowledge is that there are kids who get in trouble because they ain't got nothing to do. True. But then there's another set of kids that even if they had something to do, they would still be involved in some nefarious activities. I'm not going, I mean, look, we just need to be honest about that. Every kid that out there ain't some little angel that you've got some kids who are out here with murderous intentions. I tend to agree that midnight basketball ain't gonna do nothing for a young kid who's got gang activity or murder, that type of thing on there. Like, that's the thing you got to acknowledge. But
let's say you're right.
That may not be a popular opinion, but I think we're willing to give too much grace in some instances.
Let's follow your logic. Let's say you're right. I can see that there might be an element out there that may not be touched by the program. So what? It ain't for them then. We're going to focus on.
But those are the ones that are the source. Those are the ones that are the source of the primary part of your problem.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's true or not. And I don't think
if you talk to most police, they will tell you that it's a very small percentage. That it's a very small percentage of the same type of people who are committing 90% of the crimes.
Okay, but we're not worried about them. We're worried about the other percentage.
Sure, you are.
No, we're not.
You are.
No, we're not, because like you just said, in this hypothetical, this program is not for them. We got to think outside the box. Every program that we design for a teenager, as somebody who's designed programs for teenagers, is not going to be for every teenager. It's for the ones that are attracted to it, right? That's where you do the work. If there's an element that's encourageable, they encourageable. There's another system for them, but we should build as many systems as possible that prevent. I think about prevention. I'd rather spend $10,000 upfront on an AAU basketball team or athletic association or whatever membership for children than 23,000 because they sit in Hamilton County court system. They sit in the state jail. That's how I think. And if it doesn't reach everybody, oh well, we're gonna reach the ones that we can, because most of them are reachable. Most of them are reachable.
I got three things.
If you talk to them right, but as we get older, many of us don't know how to talk to these young people. We come at them crazy, and if you come at anybody crazy, they coming back to you. And so we gotta change the way we think and talk and interact with these young people and give them a measure of respect, even the ones that may have disappointed us. We got, just like our own kids disappointed, you don't throw them out. We gotta treat the neighborhood kids the same way. We disappointed, homie. I don't like this. I expect something different, but you can still come on in here. It's basic. This is basic. This is nothing that's super hoity-toity. This is basic human decency to humans and children. This is basic, and we've lost that because we're so afraid. Man, we gotta deal as adults. We gotta deal with our own fear and paranoia and stop projecting that on every situation and with these kids, because it's going to skew the way we talk with them. If you coming from a heart of scaredness and you terrified, you're gonna deal with them differently. If you got some confidence and you can come with them like an adult and deal with them the way they need to be dealt with.
But I think
kids in sports stay out of courts. I'll just say that. There's three things I want to say. Kids in sports stay out of courts. Number two, as a community, someone in the community that works with kids, and I go to city council meetings and things like that, and people who decide who the budgets, you look at the people who won these budgets, who have these budgets, and who are allocators of the funds. They don't got no kids. They don't got no kids, man. They are legislators that sit on these boards that don't have any kids, so they don't care about where these funds go when you talk about allocating it to the kids. When you get down to it, these are a lot of people in the LGBTQ community. There's a lot of people who
childish cat ladies. Childish cat ladies.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying I'm making a point. If you look at the Cincinnati Board of or Cincinnati City Council. Let's say Cincinnati City Council. How many of those city council members have children? So when it comes down to allocating funds, for children and youth services and things like that, since they're not directly don't care, that's my assessment from grinding my axe against this thing for the past 3 decades. Dealing with people who have funds to work with kids, programs to work with kids, and they don't want to give the money to the people who want to work with the kids because they don't have kids and they don't have empathy. Last point that I'll make. There are organizations.
You have no evidence to back that up.
There's an organization in Kentucky that has all the facilities in the world to do 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, to do summer programs, to do all these things. It has a kitchen in there that can feed the kids. They drawed me in. They're like, hey, what would you do this facility? I said, I would do just like what the Black Panthers do. I'd have these kids come in here getting breakfast in the morning. I'd have them teaching them basketball 3-on-3 skills. I'd have them upstairs doing content. And we could all do this in this current facility. These white tea people looked at me and said, we don't want to do that. So there's that. Those are 3 things. Kids in sports stay out of court. Number 2, the people with the money who can allocate the money to the programs out there that we all know that work. We know these programs work. Alex Meacham's AAU Shining Stars program works. We know these things work. They just don't want to give us the money because they don't have any kids. And the people who have the money, the white people who have these gyms and have all this stuff, they don't want to see us make these kids better.
Let me say a couple of things. Let me respond to a couple of things that Tarris said. One, you know how I am, always basing on facts. Tarris, when you go out and you do the research and you come back and you tell me how many people on these councils and boards don't have kids, and then show me how their votes correlate to not supporting kids. You've got a fully Democratic city council here in Cincinnati, and I just got done telling you that they spent a whole bunch of money on programs to try to help kids. So what you just saying don't jive. It sounds good. It's a good JD Vance line from the conservative line. Like I said, the childish cat ladies, but I'm not going to let you do that and get away with that. The other thing that I would say too is that we have to get back to is, like, I think part of the mistake is counting on government to save us, to save our kids, to save our communities. I think that if the government won't support good programs and good ideas that can help us save our kids, then we got to find ways to muster up the dollars ourselves and come together and do it. You know, that's the history of Black people. Black people, when I think about how our forefathers and foremothers came up with things with no government support, with not much money of their own, and they pulled together as community and made things happen, we have lost that. I don't care what you say. We have absolutely completely lost that as a community, and we want to put it on the government and say, oh, the government won't fund. Hey, look, we need, if we are serious about it, if we're serious about it, we should be able to come together. And there are plenty of people who already do it. And that's the thing. There are plenty of people who already do it around the city, who have an idea, who are not getting funding from the city to do it. They get a group of their people together and they come together and they make it happen. Right. And we have to be able to muster more of that and not be so reliant on the government. I'm not saying we shouldn't push the government for money or to try to get what we can, but that shouldn't be an excuse for not doing it.
Then what are you saying then, Kevin? Like, it's amazing when I hear people say they try to run that jive down on the Black community, relying on government. These multimillionaires relied on government when they built those stadiums, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Okay. Don't the Bengals rely on government?
Well, they don't rely on government.
Relied on
they don't rely on government. They just happen to be able to get from government what they rely need because they have government. Money.
They're relying on government.
Here's the reality.
Brown Stadium right now, they're about to take $600 million, that's our money, and give it to these multi-billionaires so everybody else can rely on government. But the government destroyed our communities, but we can't rely on government.
Nathan, you're missing the point of what I'm saying.
Okay.
First of all, here's what I would say. As Black people, you've hardly ever been throughout history able to rely on government. There have been a handful of occasions where government has showed up for us and made it through, but largely throughout the course of history, you've not been able to rely on government. Most of what we've been able to generate has been through I've said there have been a handful of instances where government has come through. Government is disappointed. Government has disappointed Black people way more times than they've come through.
But it's also a complicated relationship, because the reason why the white man's foot was taken out of our ancestors, was the federal government. The reason why that little girl was able to go to that school was the federal government. So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. It ain't 100%. It's a mixed bag.
Let's not forget reliance on government.
But one thing is clear: that the federal government. One thing is clear, Kevin. The federal government, via its drug policy, that we know about, and that was done surreptitiously, flooding our communities with crack cocaine, and then a plethora of white-only legislation, and the fact that these interstate highways were purposely built to destroy our neighborhoods. The government owes us. We have every right to rely on government and ask them to put money back.
The government owes you 40 acres and a mule. Good luck.
I'm just saying.
Good luck on getting that. Good luck on getting that.
I'm just saying.
I think that is the great failing of us is. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're wrong that we aren't owed those things. But the delusion of the expectation that the government is ever going to make good on the check that they owe, I just don't believe that, because that's
not even a conversation. I'm just talking about that phrase. You can't rely. Everybody else relies on government. Local architects.
But you ain't everybody else.
They get tax abatements.
That's what you're not recognizing. You ain't everybody else.
But what I'm saying, we are everybody else. We're Americans too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just hate that phrase when it comes to the Black community. Like somehow we're wrong to expect the government to create programs.
I'm not saying that you're wrong, Nathan. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you should.
What are you saying then, Kevin?
What I'm saying is that you can't rely on government to come through because they have not consistently done that for Black folks. And too often we sit back and we wait for government to deliver when we are capable of delivering for ourselves in situations where we need to do that. And we've shown that historically that we have. Not that you don't continue to push for change, not that you don't say, hey, give us our just due, but I know through history that government has never given Black folks anything without a prolonged and vicious fight. And all the while you're doing that, our kids are struggling.
Okay, but
dying in the street.
But we should rely on government for protection. We should rely on government for programs that those that need it. We should rely on government. That's the purpose why we pay taxes. So this whole don't rely on government.
But any American is going to get that
phrase that just always irked me. So it might be overkill for this situation. It's just me, bro. It's just something about that. I'm like, I only hear Black people having to deal with this. Everybody else can go to government for basements to build businesses and stadiums and whatever they want to build. But we got to rely on each other. Please. I want mine. I pay taxes. I want mine.
Yeah. Again, and there's nothing wrong with the advocacy of those things. And that is the fight. You know, that is the continuous fight. And there's no reason for us to be lazy or complacent or even just to end the idea that, you know, we're never going to get there. No, we've had some accomplishments for sure. And a lot of those things that we fought for has been repealed back, and we'll have to fight for it again. But the fight has to always be in us. Definitely be self-sufficient. We've been taught that too from our ancestors, to like look out for ourselves, to come together, to be united. That goes without saying. But to sit up here like Nathan is saying, to not fight for these things, and it's our tax dollars, we're funding everyone else, and they can't fund us. No, that's an imbalanced taxation without representation. That's why it's important that we elect the people that support our interests. And when it's very clear that people are not for the interests of our communities, you don't put them in positions of power to delegate funds here and there and there. That's why you have to be very, very smart with your vote. You don't just go vote, but then you follow your vote. You hold people accountable. You hold them to the fire. And so, you know, a lot of people aren't sophisticated enough to understand the importance of like putting these people in positions of power, in legislative positions, all the way from your local, city, state, federal government. All of it matters because it impacts your life in such a way. And so, you know, I'm not going to subscribe to the idea that we don't just rely on self and nothing else. And while they're just siphoning up all my tax dollars to help fund a stadium and everything else. No, it's not going to work like that either. But again, you know, we have to have that fight in us, and we can't take, I think what is irking Nate is the idea of the word can't, and you know, don't hold your breath. No, you fight and you will receive, you know what I'm saying? Closed mouth don't get fed. So we have to fight for it, for sure.
I agree with all of that. I'm not disagreeing with any of you that what you're saying about fighting for things. My thing is that while you fight, there are other things that you can be doing as well, because I've seen us, while we fight, we wait and we wait and we wait, and things continue to erode in our community while we're waiting on folks who aren't necessarily interested in the same thing that you are to finally deliver on it. And, you know, part of the thing that's just so frustrating for me is that sometimes we fight for these years and then we get these little crumbs and we celebrate that stuff. And it's like, I get it. You know, we glad that we getting something, but you done fought 10 years for something that the Cleveland Browns, like to your point, Nathan, the way the system works, it shows you where the priorities are. And it shows you how easy it is for them to go get money that don't even belong to them. Unclaimed money that is your money that you done forgot about, which I went and got mine, by the way. I had over $100 in unclaimed funds. I'll be daggone if the Browns get my money.
I ain't mad at you.
You better go check yours and get your money. I got my money.
Hey, send me the link, man. I'll hit you up on text.
Yeah,
send me the link.
Go get your money out there. Because if they get $600 million, it won't be a dime of mine.
Think about it. $600 million is transformative. They could have took that money and said, look, we're going to put $100 million into after school programs, which work. They work. We're going to put it in after school programs, surround you with educated, qualified people, and we're going to extend the learning through for a couple more hours in a safe way. Mom and dad get a chance to get that overtime, or at least they're not stressed out trying to leave and weave through traffic. Kids are in an enriching program. This is how you invest in the next generations. These white male Republicans, that's who's running things. That's a description. It shouldn't be a pejorative. I don't mean it like that. I'm being descriptive. Are taking $600 million from Ohioans and giving it to people so they can move the Cleveland Brown Stadium. And you think this is America first? How is this America first? This is a crazy land. But this is what the voters voted for or didn't care enough to get informed to vote or whatever. This is what happens when you don't vote in Ohio. You get these kind of disinvestments in your community to rich people. Go buy your own stadium. What's the point of being a billionaire if you can't pay for your own stadium? It's amazing. But like you said, Kevin, they've got the access to the power. They're the ones that are in in Columbus, right? They're in the meetings, they're at the golf club. So you know how the business is done. So it is what it is.
Yeah. No, man. I mean, look,
I will.
I think we're all on the same page, kind of talking about the same thing, just kind of see slightly differently how it gets there. I'm big on, I think as Black people, we got to build our own economy, support each other, and create our own ways of creating victories. And
absolutely, and people
that's just it's not a completely different mindset, I think, from where you guys are in terms of what you're talking about. And I feel you on getting our tax dollars worth, but maybe I'm a little bit more cynical about government and what they actually going to do for us.
I love government. The right people are running it. Government is great if the right people are running it with the right mentality. But I think where we differ is that Black people have always been resilient while fighting for our rights. We've always did our own thing, and they're doing it right now. I got plenty of Black people out here hustling, doing all kind of things, but they're still fighting in terms of a policy fight to make sure that our people get what they're supposed to get. But so I'm with you 100%. I understand what you're saying, bro. Let's move on real quick. So the DOJ and the FBI concluded that Epstein had no client list and that he died by suicide. And this was a big thing with MAGA. MAGA thought that Biden administration was like holding on to the secrets because maybe Hunter Biden was in the files or some Democrat was in the files. Now, we all know that Trump had a 15-year, very, very close relationship with Epstein. And so we know he's in the files. And Pam Bondi, who was the attorney general, it was just it was this year. It's just a few months ago. She said she had the client list on her desk and they were going to reveal it. And it was a big thing and then nothing happened. And then Elon Musk, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he gets mad at Trump, goes on X, formerly Twitter, and says, well, you know, Trump's name is in the Epstein's files, as if he's in the Epstein's files because he was doing something strange. And then now 2 weeks later, the DOJ and FBI conclude nothing to see here. What do you think? What's your take on all of this?
Men in Black, Jedi mind trick. Or what was that Jedi mind trick button that they hit on there? Men in Black it was. They hit a button and you forget everything.
Trump does that to MAGA all the time.
Trump got a boop. It's over. That's crazy land, man. That's crazy land right there.
So let me probe deep. I ain't let you off the hook, Trump.
And no, don't you
I ain't
dare.
let you off the hook. So, to me, when I read this, tell me what you think, Tarris. When I read this, it looks like Donald Trump has something to hide. That's what it looks like.
From what I've been saying, what I've been saying on this programming since I've been on this programming, this is like the WWE, and Donald Trump is going to prove it whenever he has UFC fighting at the White House. He's already said he's going to do it. He's going to bring UFC fighting to the White House.
Is it just me, or did you just change the subject?
No. Let me land.
Yes.
Yeah, I was kind of lost for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Let me
let me get out the way.
This is all scripted. Dana White's writing this script. So Dana White is behind all this stuff, man. He's sitting there writing all this stuff out. And if Donald Trump bringing UFC to the White House isn't evidence of what I'm saying and have been saying about this is all look at the shiny ball while we go over here and do this. and why it keeps everybody's attention on this and this and oh, can you believe the drama? What I said before, whenever Elon Musk wasn't going to stay in politics longer than 90 days because government moves slow. They use Elon Musk. MAGA is the biggest users, but I tell you who's bigger users than MAGA? The Republican Party. The Republican Party is using MAGA, and you're going to see it in Kentucky in the midterms what Thomas Massey does that. Whoever Trump puts up. So when you're asking me about how I feel about Trump erasing that's a distraction. Because who knows? 2 months from now, they might come back and say, oh, yeah, we found it. And Trump's name wasn't on it. But you know whose name was on it? P. Diddy. But P. Diddy's going to get a pardon from Trump so he can join the Republican Party and switch everything. This is all theatrics.
I think that Trump used that neuralizer on you one too many times. One too many times. He has effed you up.
The spin.
I don't even need to say anything. I mean, that was
you asked me. You asked me what I thought.
Jesus.
You asked me what I thought. You asked me what I thought, and I gave you what my thoughts were. So 3 months from now, when Donald Trump is having UFC fights at the White House and they're selling tickets for $10,000, ringside tickets for $10,000 a ringside seat for UFC fights to go on at the White House. Y'all gonna come back and be like, dang, T, you ain't that crazy, man. You know, you do your research on some stuff.
So translation, you can't even deal with this, can you? You can't even deal with the possibility.
I can't even understand.
You can't even deal with like you are that into it, huh, Trump? You can't see this for what this obviously is. Obviously, Trump is covering this up. And you can't even even bring yourself to admit that.
It's okay. No, I said he's covering it up. I said he's covering it up. Okay. I'm saying Dana White is writing this script to keep everybody looking at this stuff to all this other stuff that's going on.
You mean Trump is writing this script?
That's what you mean. Dana White's writing the script for Trump, and you can't even do it. Hold on. If Trump was writing the script, if Trump was writing the script for this, Trump will be able to beat Thomas Massey and all the other people who are against
One
him.
One has nothing to do with the other. This is fascinating,
So
Tarris.
you support. So then the bigger question is, you support a pedophile. If he's messing with young girls, then they're probably a minor.
Who? I don't support. I'm a conservative. I'm a conservative. I didn't never want to.
Is MAGA going to believe? Are they going to take the BS? Or are they sticking with that? There was a client list, and they listen to Elon Musk, and basically, or are they just they don't believe their lying eyes? I mean,
who's going to believe if they're going
to support a pedophile, or you don't?
If they're going to believe Elon Musk, they're going to go over and they're going to join Elon Musk's new political party that he's going to form. He's going to go form a new political party. Elon Musk is going to do because I'm bringing this into fruition because Nathan said when his friend Elon Musk turned against him and said there is a file. There is a file. We're going to release it. Why didn't you release it? Because Trump's on there. And then Trump hits the button that says there is no file, which he could turn back around and say, yeah, there is a file sooner or later. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk is going to start a new party. And I brought up Diddy because of this. And y'all think I'm crazy. Diddy was a huge Democrat supporter for the voter die. And they took him out of the game right around the election time, whenever he was talking about starting his own political party. P. Diddy is ripe for a pardon from Donald Trump because it would be no different if Trump pardons Diddy. He will be because whenever Diddy got back in the jail cells, all the criminals were standing ovation for him. It would be a way for Trump.
Can we get back to Epstein?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Can we come back? I know we done spent enough time on Mars with Elon Musk. Can we come back to Earth now and address what your original question was, Nathan? So help me understand, because I want to make sure before I say what I say that all of the facts. So Elon Musk came out and said that there was a client list and that Trump was on it.
Yes, he said it. Okay. He said Trump was in the Epstein files. Right, which is kind of vague because we know he's in there because he was friends with him. But it's
Right.
like, how is he in there? Is he in there as in participating in something strange that nobody is going for? Or was he just a fly on the wall? As if being a fly on the wall in a room like that would be any better.
Right, right. Yeah, so I've been trying to make sense out of this whole, they had the client list, they don't have the client list. And with the difficult thing with Donald Trump is that one, he's such a liar, and that it's hard to try to bring logic and common sense, because the first thing I would think about is, one, why would his attorney general come out and say she's got the client list on the desk, she's about to review it and release it, if Trump was on the list? Like that would be the epitome of stupidity.
Or
And
smart.
we know
Or
that
very
all of
smart.
that, which is not impossible for any of his cabinet selections. But the one thing that I would say is that Trump, if anything, his sycophantic followers are not going to do anything to throw him under the bus. So why would they say they had a list knowing that he would be on it? So that was kind of my first thought, is like, well, they wouldn't go through all of that if he was actually on the list. They would have buried it. They would have said, they would have said there is no list from the beginning if he had been on there, unless somebody
Maybe not.
They just got
really
control of
just
the government. So now they're checking for themselves. They're going into these conspiracy theories. And now that they're going through it and actually seeing for themselves, and they may have came across, I mean, for Elon Musk, which we know he's abstracted all the personal information, and to just like out of the wind throw that out there. You know, there's no need and no reason for that. But to just put that out there, and then this has already been a brewing thing. MAGA wasn't expecting Trump to be on there. They've seen pictures and everything else, but to turn around and you can't even provide the list. First, you were going to reveal the list. You got your FBI, Kash Patel, who was one of the biggest conspiracy theorists. It's a total letdown by MAGA that he's not being forefront, and everything that they believe is not, coming to light like they thought it would be with them being in the government. It's like, oh, we're going to drain the swamp, but it looks like they're the swamp, or they're the loyal lapdogs, and either, there is something there and they're not going to tell the truth, because why would they do that? It's going to harm Trump. Or it's just like, it was true all along that there was nothing there and it's nothing to see, but just a quick turnaround. And now you don't want to show a list, which you was so adamantly willing to do so at one point, and now all of a sudden it's nothing to see. No, that seems suspicious and skeptic to me.
Yeah, like I said, with Trump, man, and the circus that he runs, it's hard to try to make logical sense out of any of the things that he do. Like, it's not beyond the realm of believability that he would cover it up. It's not beyond the realm of believability that his people would be so ignorant that they would say they got a list, that he's on it, and publish it and then have to backtrack. Like none of that. It's not beyond the realm of believability that this is all just a distraction that he's just throwing out there again to get people to quit talking about, the impacts of the big beautiful bill and the Iran thing. I mean, it could be all of those things, and that's the thing about living in 1984 Trump world, is you just don't know. I mean, nothing makes sense that this cat does sometimes in his own mind, and so you don't really know what to make of it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a list and he was on it, like you said. I mean, him and Jeffrey Epstein was boys. Epstein, there's a lot of like with the Diddy case, there's a lot of people that was holding their breath. It is like, Diddy gonna start naming names, who was at the freak offs and all this kind of stuff. It's the same thing with the Epstein case. There's a whole lot of people who, if
sleep with porn star.
Exposed,
it's not out of the realm of reality for this man. Like, he slept with a porn star. That's why you're convicted felon over sex charges, and so it's not out of the realm of possibility. And so it comes down to, what is MAGA's bottom line? Because it seemed like being a pedophile is really, really, really bad to them. So if you are a pedophile, if that could even be a possibility, do you still support this man? How can you still allow this man to lead, and knowing that he has a thing for young minors?
MAGA's over. MAGA's over. MAGA is over, and is after. I say now, 100 days is up. Trump got his big beautiful bill passed. Midterms are coming. MAGA's over. We're going to see. You're going to see in the midterms there, because when MAGA's going to start putting their candidates out there and Elon Musk is going to start challenging them, the MAGA movement is done. And the more you guys have Trump deranged syndrome, y'all are the ones keeping it going, because us Republicans, us conservatives, we're trying to move past Donald Trump.
Which Republicans, which conservatives? You ain't talking about.
There's a difference between MAGA.
Which Republicans are you talking about, Tarris? You
every
ones in Congress.
Every last one of the ones in Congress are past it too, because they never got to deal with Donald Trump or any of his bills or anything.
Here's why I tell you MAGA is. Here's why I'm going to tell you MAGA is not done. You know the reason why MAGA is not done, Tarris? Because Republicans can't win without MAGA. If it's true, if what you're saying is true, if MAGA is really done, then the GOP is done. Because y'all need them crackpots to keep y'all afloat. And that's pretty much what it is. Y'all need the crazy. You married the crazy. Y'all married the crazy. You slept with the crazy. You had babies with the crazy. You in with the crazy. And I know MAGA don't apply. I'm not saying that everybody who calls themselves MAGA is a crazy, but y'all know the ones that I'm talking about, the QAnon shaman and all of the Proud Boys, all of the rest of them nutcases that y'all sold your souls to get their votes. Y'all can't win without them. You can't.
And you can't win, and the Democrats can't win without black people.
Trump needed every last single one of those crazy votes to win.
And the Democrats need black people to win, and they're losing black people in drones.
They ain't losing
black people are leaving the Democratic Party faster, and I guarantee you in 2028, you're going to see a bigger shift. Of people leaving the Democratic Party. Black people are leaving the Democratic Party, and if you look up the poll numbers,
it's just you, Tarris. It's just you.
I've been gone. I've been gone. I've been gone way before. I've been way gone.
Where you go now? Since you're not with MAGA,
I'm not.
Where you going now?
Like I've said since I've been on this programming, there's a difference between conservative movement and MAGA, and we're gonna see. We're gonna see in the midterms when Trump. We can use Kentucky. We can use Kentucky and Thomas Massey. How Trump, you look on your commercial, look on your TV right now. You're already seeing disparaging ads, and they're not even having the midterms until we're not having the midterms till May, general election till November. Why is it June, July, and Donald Trump is already spending money disparaging, going after Thomas Massey? Thomas Massey is not MAGA. You guys think that MAGA is going to beat Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey is going to.
I don't think MAGA is going to be
saying that, but I don't believe that.
Okay, so if all these people can't beat MAGA, if these real Republicans, MAGA is going to put up these Republicans to beat them in the midterms, the Republicans are going to beat MAGA and further show that we use MAGA to beat the Democrats the same way the Democrats use black votes to win. And you didn't get that to win this time because you guys are holding on to things instead of looking at immigration.
I'm living in a
dream world. I'm living in the dream world, but we won. We won. You guys lost.
And what exactly did you win, Tarris? Tell me what lovely party gifts and prizes is Donald Trump bringing to your life?
We stopped Kamala Harris from ruining this country. I am so glad that we got no tax on tips. I'm so glad we got no tax on overtime. I'm glad we got no tax on tips.
Hold on.
Yes, you did. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I work on tips, sir. I know we got no tax on tips up to $20,000. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I can claim $20,000 on tips right now.
It's actually $25,000. It's actually $25,000. And it's got a 2-year sunset. So in 2 years it goes away. So it's not really. It's actually
it's $50,000. It's $50,000 that's inside that's boosting our economy. There's things that you don't like. You don't like those things about the big blue or the big beautiful bill. There's
what
things I don't like about the big
beautiful bill. It was a complete lie, and you fell for it. Because
like
I told you from the beginning, we all know what FICA is, right? Do you know what FICA is?
Our credit score from
no FICA. It's a deduction. It comes out of your check. FICA comes out. FICA is a tax. FICA applies to all of this. So if FICA applies and it's a tax, that means the whole no tax on tip thing is a lie. As I told you a couple weeks back, it has a 2-year sunset, and there's some other things about it that just don't make a lot of sense whatsoever. But like I told you, it was a lie. You're still being taxed, but it sounds good though.
but the tax breaks for the uber rich is permanent.
Are permanent.
There's no expiration date. There's no way to reverse it. And so,
That's
a
so
lot of
untrue.
things,
That's so
not
untrue. You
untrue.
guys are expounding untrue information because you're talking about the TCJ Act, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was implemented in 2017. And I know because I'm an entrepreneur. I use these tax codes when I file my taxes. And so now those tax codes, the TCJA are permanent. The Tax and Jobs Cuts Acts are permanent for entrepreneurs like myself that get $40,000 exemptions. Those are the tax credits that are. So it depends. You guys can try to spin this out to be Donald Trump derangement if you'd like to, but this is not a bad bill.
No, that's just a deflection. I wouldn't lie to you, bro. Go look it up. FICA comes out. FICA is a tax. So that tells you right there is a tax on tips. And then secondly, you're still going to be taxed, but you have to file for the deduction and you got a 2-year sunset on it. And there's some other things about it that some people are already saying just make it very unappetizing. I keep telling people this. I wish it were differently. I don't want to have to pick sides. I wish that we had a Republican Party that offered up ideas that I felt like really help people, but we don't.
Can I ask
We
you?
don't. You got a Republican Party that is completely about the bosses and the ownership class, and almost everything that they come up with is always skewed toward them. And
So-
this no tax on tip thing.
I got to
is the
answer
same
a
way.
question. You got to answer my question. If I'm a barber or a bartender and I get cash tips, how is FICA involved in that at all? It gives me an opportunity to go in there and to keep that money.
Exactly. So you would have to file, you would have to claim that. And it goes back to what I'm reading. A lot of people saying there's a lot of unusefulness in this idea. Exactly, Tarris. That makes a lot of sense, don't it? Because most people are not going to file them.
So now when you do file them, that's an extra $25,000 that you get.
I'll take it. But why is there a cap? Why is it a cap on 25? It should have been unlimited.
Now you just moved the goalpost, Mr. Nathan. You just moved the goalpost. I asked you a question. Okay, look, with a barber or a bartender, at the end of the night, at the end of the day, they take their cash money and they take their tips and they keep that money. And then at the end of when they go to file their taxes, they get to claim another up to $25,000 to say if they get tips through Venmo or through these other kind of things.
Correct, sir.
So how does that hurt anybody who's an entrepreneur? How?
Well, you have to look at the details, but now you're changing the question. I told you when you brought this up last week or the week before that the whole no tax on tip thing was a scam. I had just read an article in Newsweek that said that FICA, which is a tax, will be included. In the final version of this bill, FICA comes out. So it can't be no tax on tip. You might say it's some tax exemptions on tips, but there is a tax on it. And it sunsets in 2 years. What I would say, working class people, why put a cap on? Make it unlimited. If you make $100,000,
you know why, Nathan? You know why he put he put a cap limit on it at 2 years is the same reason why he put a sunset on the Tax Cut and Jobs Act when he instituted that. Donald Trump didn't plan on losing in 2020. And so his idea is that those tax cuts were going to remain active through his 2 terms. And then when he got unelected, that was going to be thrown on somebody else's plate, whether it was a Republican or a Democratic president. Then they were going to have to make the decision on whether to extend the tax cuts or not. That's why he fought so hard for it this time around, because those were his cuts and he had to. He didn't want to be the guy to let the tax cuts that he established expire. Donald Trump didn't plan on losing in 2024. And honestly, he didn't plan on being here right now being president of the United States. That's why he sunset that. The reason why you got a 2-year sunset on no tax on tips is because in 2 years, assuming we have an election, which Phil would tell you is dubious. I'm not so far to that point as Phil is. But the reason why he sunsetted it 2 years is because guess what? In 2 years, he's going to be on his way out, and who cares at that point? He certainly won't care.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I agree with that.
For me, if you really want to help people, I say it never sunsets, and there should be no limit on it. So now you really have created a vehicle for working class people to try to find them way, rise up. And it seems like whenever it comes to working class people, when we put good ideas in place, there's always a cap or a sunset right before you can actually pull yourself up all the way and walk on your own 2 feet. It costs money to bring people up, hold them up a little bit, and then push them out. And we'll do this, and we'll get just like this, and then we stop. And then we wonder why people never get all the way out.
And that's such a small fraction of like the workforce. Like everybody don't get tips and like overtime and all that, so it don't even impact a lot of people at that. But then you got to think about what this bill does in reverse. So what money they're getting around tax time to recuperate for the whole year, but then you're losing your health care. Most of these employers don't provide health care, so you won't qualify, or you lose your health care. Or if you have health care, your rates are going up, the energy cost is going up, tariffs on everything, groceries and things you purchase is going up. So it's like one hand giveth, the other one taketh away. It's like you're still going to end up like a squeeze of the middle class, a squeeze of the working poor, where it's just like the only one that really walks off good is the uber rich and wealthy. It's like, and if you're not rich and wealthy, you're going to suffer from this bill.
I don't believe so. I think if you don't understand. If you go out here and you run a business and you don't understand, like Donald Trump, whenever it was a debate when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were debating, and Hillary Clinton said, "Donald Trump, how come you don't pay more tax? You pay less taxes than maybe your secretary, or whatever like that." And Donald Trump says, "Miss Clinton, I'm just going with the same tax cuts that you and your friends get to do too." So I would encourage anyone out there who's an entrepreneur to learn the tax laws. That way you're not caught in that situation that TNT was just talking about. If you are able to spend money on your business, you can write that business off, and the money that you make,
but here's the thing,
you can invest that.
Here's the thing, Tarris, is that you're an entrepreneur, but most people are not. Most people work for people like you who own businesses or do that. So you're talking about a small percentage of people who are actually going to benefit in the way that you're talking about from entrepreneurship. And then when we talk about the number of Black entrepreneurs there are, that number gets even smaller if we just want to keep it to our people in terms of how much we benefit from these taxes. So I'm not going to say to you that there aren't some benefits in there for entrepreneurs or people who own businesses, but the reality is most Americans don't own business. Most Americans work for somebody. They work for a corporation or they work for a small business where they're not going to reap the benefits, those same benefits that you're talking about. And to TNT's point, that was an excellent point. One hand giveth, one hand taketh away. What difference does it make if you take away tax on tips, but that's offset or in some cases exacerbated by my healthcare costs that are now going to go up exponentially because you've cut my healthcare? Well, you've basically erased any gains that I was going to make on that. That's why you got to look at this bill, not just pick and choose what you like out of a buffet. You got to look at the whole thing in its totality and the impact that it's going to have on the country in its totality. And, again, time will tell. We'll see. We'll see in a year or two here when some of these things take effect. I think some of the healthcare cuts actually don't go into effect until 2027, which again is strategic because Trump is trying to delay the pain that folks are going to feel until after the midterms. He's thinking like, well, we're not going to let a lot of this stuff go into effect until after people have already voted. Because if we do it now and people start feeling the pain between now and election day, to the fullest extent, that's not going to be good for him. So all of these sunsets and starts of these different things, they're all strategic to serve his purpose.
That's all I got, folks. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I got something. For Nate Turner, because he keeps saying Nat Turner over and over that I don't understand about the party switch. And I'm going to educate him and he can do his research or whatever. The party switch happened when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was locked up in jail. And Coretta, his wife, called Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy. Richard Nixon, similar to when Ice Cube had the platinum plan and he went to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and Donald Trump said, "I'll talk to you later," and Joe Biden said, "I'll talk to you later." It's kind of the same thing. But Coretta Scott King, Martin Luther King Jr. was in jail. Coretta Scott King called John F. Kennedy, said, "I will take I'll take your case and I'll get and advocate for Martin Luther King Jr. to get out of jail. When Richard Nixon did nothing. At that moment, Martin Luther King Sr., who was a registered Republican, called all his friends, because he was a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, called all his friends and said, we are not going to vote Republican. We're going to vote Democrat this time. Because in previous elections, the Democrats had won, the Republicans had won 60 to 70% of the black vote in all previous elections, previous to the John F. Kennedy election. Then when John F. Kennedy won the election,
Tarris,
hold on, let me finish. The Democratic Party, who was Lyndon B. Johnson, who after he got in there, after he said, I want to write this N-word bill. He called it the N-word bill, and I'm going to have Democrats voting for the next 300 years. Those are all facts. So you're saying the party switch happened and our party switch happened and this and this. The party switch happened with John F. Kennedy, with Martin Luther King Jr. going to jail. That's when the party switch happened. So all that other Southern strategy and all that kind of stuff, you can look at it all you want to, but the real party switch happened when Martin Luther King Jr. was in jail. Coretta Scott King called both Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy took the phone call and advocated for Martin Luther King to get out of jail. Jr., Martin Luther King Sr., who was a registered Republican, called all his pastor friends. All this crap about all the Democrats, because the Democrats hate black people.
You sound ridiculous. The Republican Party.
You sound like Republicans hate black people, and it sounds like you hate yourself.
It's not ridiculous.
I don't understand. Black people vote their interests, and that's
you haven't voted your interests since civil rights. What has gotten better? What has gotten better since civil rights?
Let her finish.
Based on our race to a party, black people always voted their interests. That's why we were Republicans, and then we went Democrat, because our the interests change, and that's how it always should be. And my question is, why are you still standing up and advocating for a party that is totally against your interests? I mean, I hear about the things you care about, and the people that you support don't support the things that are your interests. So make it make sense to me why you can stand behind people that clearly don't care about the things you care about. That's what it's about. That's what your political party and affiliation supposed to mean. It don't have nothing to do. If Trump said tomorrow he was going to offer reparations, guess what? I would be for Trump right now. It's like it's about my interests. You know what I mean? So what are you talking about?
So we are closer. We are closer now.
Don't make it seem like black people are only going to go one side or a particular party just because it's a D or R behind it. No, it's about our interests. And when if one party has majority of the things that support our interests, that's where we go. And that's why they have majority support from the African community, because 80% or just a higher percentage of what they fight for, what they advocate for, is the things that we care about. That's why I don't align with Republicans and definitely not MAGA on a lot of things. They don't support my interests. If anything, it's in the continuation of suppression and a resistance to the things that we care about, from the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, from the John Lewis Voting Act. All of these things, it's a resistance on their side. Explain why. Why would you support anyone that don't support the things that we care about, that we fight for?
Because we don't fight for the same things, I don't believe, TNT, because I believe that the Democratic Party uses the black people for their vote, and they try to flood us with immigrants, and they've just done so much. What was the longest filibuster in history that was previous to Hakeem Jeffries or Cory Booker's filibuster? Was the filibuster to oppose the Civil Rights Act. The Democratic Party throughout history has been the party to hurt black people. And right now, we are closer with Donald Trump saying that Donald Trump in the Supreme Court, it wasn't Donald Trump, so I'm going to give him that credit, but the Supreme Court of the United States saying that birthrights had to do with descendants of slaves. We are closer now to reparations than we've ever been.
I hope to God that you are not saying that to them young, impressionable young men you work with in that program you're doing.
What are you talking about?
I hope you don't share that nonsense with them kids and try to steer them down the wrong path of history about what's going on with these political parties. That you would be dead wrong to do that, Tarris.
Nathan, this is the same argument, if you recall, that when Kevin Gordon was on the podcast that we always used to get in, and Kevin wanted to have this historical conversation, and I had to school Kevin in the same way that I'm not even going to take the time to school Tarris with today, because we already been at this for 2 hours. But the fact of the matter is that he is correct, is that there was a point in time when Black people were largely a part of the Republican Party. To TNT's point, why? Because the Republican Party at that time was the party that was against slavery and was for the ending of slavery. So there was no bigger interest for Black people in this country than that. So it's just like a dude who's looking for a woman. I'm gonna go to the one that's paying me attention, that's showing me love. You ain't showing me love over here, I ain't got nothing to do with you. This sister over here showing me love, that's the one who I'm gonna be with. That is how Black people have made their political choices throughout history, is affiliating themselves with the party whose interests have more aligned with them and where they're going. So over time, gradually, there was no one flashpoint moment. It wasn't Dr. Martin Luther King, because Black folks started assimilating into the Democratic Party back in the 1930s. So there was gradual migration in the 1930s and again in the 1960s, primarily because the Democratic Party was the party of civil rights. And so once again, just like Black folks lined up with Republicans to end slavery, Black folks lined up with the Democrats for civil rights. And that is how we came to be where we are today in terms of our party affiliation. Okay. First of all, and if we want to talk about today, in modern day politics, first of all, you can't even tell me what the Republican platform is, because they don't have one. What they do have is Project 2025. They didn't even express no platform. They didn't even express no platform at their convention, which is usually a standard. Ever since Donald Trump came on the scene, the Republican Party don't have a platform. You know why they don't have a platform? Because Donald Trump don't believe in nothing. He runs on what is politically convenient for him. So you can't sit here and tell me one thing that Donald Trump and the Republicans are offering you as a Black man other than a tax cut for your business, okay? That's about it. They're not trying to do anything as it pertains to social justice. They're not trying to do anything as far as creating or growing Black businesses. They're not trying to do any of that stuff in terms of showing up in the Black community and talking to Black folks about that. All they want to talk about is convincing you that immigrants are taking jobs that you don't want to do and that you have no plans on doing. And I don't care what anybody says, Americans ain't getting out. And you're about to see it. You're about to see it, Tarris, when you start trying to utilize some of these services. The immigrants have been and you can't get nobody, or you wind up having to pay $2,000 to $3,000 for a service that you could have gotten much cheaper someplace else because those service providers are no longer around. You're going to feel it, right? You're going to feel it in your wallet and in your pocketbook. And it's not going to create more jobs for Black people, white people, for no other people. All it's going to do is create a vacuum of services and help that nobody is going to want to fill, and we're all going to suffer for it. That's what your Republican Party is offering you up. And I would challenge any Black person who supports the Republicans to come and show me a list of things that the Republican Party has done for Black folks. Don't bring me empowerment zones, because that's what your old boy Uncle Tim Scott tried to bring. That's all they got to say. Like that was Tim's empowerment zones. That's what the empowerment zones. That's
opportunity zones. It's called opportunity zones.
Well, whatever they call empowerment zones, opportunity zones, whatever. They ain't doing nothing for Black folks. Mm-hmm. So bring me the list, Tarris. That's my challenge to you. I want you to go and the next time you're on the podcast, we'll give you the floor to run down your list of all of the things that the Republicans are doing under Donald Trump. You can even go back to George W. Bush if you want to and show what the Republicans have done for Black people. And I'll have an open mind. Convince me, brother. I want to be convinced. I want to drink that Kool-Aid that you drink because it sounds awfully good the way you present it. It tastes awfully good. I want to taste that euphoria too, but I don't believe it. That Kool-Aid is laced with poison. That's that Jim Jordan Kool-Aid.
Exactly. And don't sell yourself on that narrative and then to our community. Like that's some type of old, story of like with how the Democratic Party bases and stuff. I mean, we evolve and we change. And so I'm really surprised that you allow yourself to even be manipulated with that narrative. Like at this point, what I'm saying?
Goodness.
We Black people don't have any obligation to any party. We don't. And it sounds like you feel like you obligated to the Republicans because that's where you feel like everything started in the nexus. So how dare we leave them even when their interests don't align with what we care about? We are not obligated to them. Like, no, we're obligated to each other, the community, unity, Black people. We're not obligated to any of these parties. This is the game. And then for anybody that go out there and sell that narrative, like, and it's a lot of black folks that do that, not just you, but different ones, like, oh, well, we were Republicans and Frederick Douglass and everything else, and you hold that dear like that means something. Like, no,
it means something to me.
Right, but are you in 2025?
Yeah,
like,
I'm in 2025.
Are you in this reality?
It means something to me.
There's a lot of things that mean something to you. I hear what means something to you, and the things that mean something to you sound like a lot of things that aligns with what I care about. And that party ain't offering that. So make it make sense.
Okay. I can make it make sense. The Democratic Party, the Republican, being a Black conservative and Black Republican automatically gets a negative connotation. Automatically. You don't just be.
Why do you think?
Because historically, that has been the case of people bootlicking and doing all that kind of stuff. I offer a different solution, and I'll land here. My results and my fruit that follow behind me are impeccable, and I would put that up against anybody on this panel, anybody that will come on this panel, anybody in the future on this panel, and been on this panel in the past. We can match fruits of works. And how we do that.
The work that you do personally, brother. This is not about the work that you do personally.
I represent the Republican Party.
I believe you do good work, and I believe your heart is in the right place. And I think I agree with TNT. I think like some of the things that we talk about on this program, I don't think we're misaligned on that. I think where the misalignment is that you have aligned yourself with people who have no interest in that. I mean, look, we just got done talking about earlier in this program, and Phil subscribes to this. God bless his heart. But he's one of them. He's one of those conservatives that you talk about that's waiting for MAGA to die. But all of those things that we talked about addressing the underlying root causes of crime and violence and things that are impacting our people, he don't, and they don't believe in that. They believe in more police, and they believe in locking you up. They believe spending that money on making sure that people can eat and that they have mental health and that they have all of these other services that might be preventative to crime. They don't believe in that. They don't. And they will tell you that. We don't believe that it works. It's a waste of money. Lock them up. That's their attitude. That is the attitude.
I agree with you.
And you know the reason why your fruits will never get traction in that party is for that. Now you may be able to go out on your own and do it. And again, this is where this goes back to my point about not waiting on government to do it. If you're waiting on your party to help you produce the fruits, they'll never get produced because they're not going to help you. So you go out on your own and you produce them. That goes back to my point. You're never going to get what you want from that party. They're not going to do it because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in the same things you believe in.
I don't think either party. I don't think either party. I don't think it's either party. I don't think it's either party. I just don't like that whenever we got Black conservatism or being a Black Republican, it's always a connotation. Even without, before I even say anything, just because I'm a Black conservative, it's always a connotation. Like I said, we align up on a lot of things. It's just I don't agree, and I think that and I'll land here. I don't think either party does us justice. I just believe that the Democratic Party does us injustice more because we've been giving our vote to them for the past 30, 40 years. And what has gotten better collectively for Black people? We are zero. Our net worth is less now than it was in the 40s as a Black community collectively. It's gotten worse. And until we can come together as a community and quit relying on evangelical Democrats and stuff like that, and we start pulling together as ourselves, and we don't need Republicans either. I think that in order for us to get the final the reparations and things that we're going to need to build ourselves as a Black community, we're going to have to align up with a party. But if we've been aligned with the Democratic Party for all these years and they have not moved the needle closer to reparations or any of that kind of stuff to reparations, not even to even come up with birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court of the United States of America came up with Black people were the reason they came up with birthright citizenship was for Black descendants of slaves.
And your guy want to get rid of that. Your
no,
guy
he
want to get rid of that.
That's untrue. And
Are you serious?
I'll leave that there. That's untrue. Donald Trump does not want to get, he's not my guy, but Donald Trump does not want to get rid of birthright citizenship.
Are you serious?
He wants to give birthright citizenship to descendants of slaves. He defined birthright citizenship.
He's trying to get rid of it, Tarris. I'm not going to sit up here and let you tell that story.
No. To me, it's closer to getting reparations.
He took it to the Supreme Court, bro. He took it to the Supreme Court.
And what did the Supreme Court say? And the Supreme Court said the birthrights was for descendants of slaves.
The Supreme Court didn't already have to say that. It was already well established. I mean, again, we're at the end of the show, but Kevin is absolutely right. This is undisputable. That's exact. Donald Trump has said he wanted to do it. Now, the thing is there's a thin line. For MAGA and Republicans, they're going to say he's saying that just about so-called immigrants, which is completely hypocritical if you think about the family structure of his own family. His wife's an immigrant, mother and father immigrants. I mean, it's just crazy. But the real thought is that it could be used to take away birthright citizenship for anybody and everybody.
And this nation is built on immigrants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we
Irish and different ones came here. So you think that he's just looking out for Black folks? Please. You know what I'm saying? He has a motive and agenda to go after the undocumented and to get them out quickly and not to have any uses to be able to stay here and establish on there. It's breaking up a lot of families. Wow. So it's very cruel.
And how could you trust that if he's just saying birthright citizenship about immigrants, just like you trusted that he said he was only going after the worst of the worst immigrants to deport them. And now he's deporting clarinetists, soccer stars, pretty much anybody that they can catch. Oh, we ain't running up in people's jobs and schools. Y'all believed all that mess. And now he's doing the exact opposite of what he said. So this is the problem that I have with people who support Donald Trump. And I've said it from the beginning. You can't trust a liar. You can never take the word of a liar because you can never count on him holding to anything that he says. And no matter how many times Donald Trump proves it time and again that he'll say one thing and then he'll say anything, right? He'll say anything that he needs to say. And then he'll even come back and say, well, I never said that. Like this, nothing this man says can be trusted. The last thing I'll say to Tarris, that here's one thing that I do agree with you on, and I've said this on this pod. Do I think Black people get the return on the investment from the Democratic Party that they deserve or what we put into it? Absolutely not. The Democrats get way more from us than we get back in return. So I wouldn't say that we don't get anything, but I would definitely say that we don't get the return for investment in terms of the loyalty and the input that we put in, that we definitely want more. But it's still light years ahead of anything that you would get from the Republican Party. The problem with party politics is this, and we talk about it because I was going to say, the problem that we sometimes have is that we make the wrong choice in candidates. But that's not entirely our fault, because the way the party politic machine is set up is that the voter doesn't actually really get to kind of like choose the best of the voters or the best of the candidates that they want. Like the party infrastructure kind of serves up for you who they want to give you the candidates to vote for. So we talk about the Democratic slate here in the city, right? Like that comes from the party machine internally, where they endorse the particular candidates that they feel like should represent you. And then the people just kind of follow suit. They vote for the candidates that they're kind of force fed through the political machine. And so that doesn't always necessarily mean that the best candidate for us is in that group, right? The best candidate for us might be the dude that they didn't pick, but he's not going to get elected because the political machine has determined he didn't deserve the endorsement, and the people who are married to the party are going to follow that. So I think some of the machinery of the political parties needs to change so that you can get some of these jokers out there who are blocking, or who, a lot of times are as much in the interest, in the money interests, as some of the Republican candidates are. That's the problem, because we do wind up with people who may not block as bad as the Republicans, but they ain't really trying to help as much as they could be helping. And so I feel like you got to get into some of that political machinery. And this is on both sides. Both parties suffer from it, because I think we wind up voting for the people who the party tells us to vote for, versus, the party infrastructure tells us to vote for, versus who we really might like if we didn't have that. And it's sort of fed to us. Well, the party machinery knows what's best for us and what's best for the party. And so take these candidates that we're going to give you, and you vote for them. And I don't know that that's, I don't know that always results in us getting the best candidates. That's just my opinion.
Folks, that's all I got. And thank you for your time.
Appreciate you guys, man. Big
Yep.
show.
Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back on Friday. Thank you so much, Tarris, TNT. Appreciate you.
Yeah, see you guys.